Coming up on Cannabis Coast to Coast News this week.
We have a president who said that in Florida that it should be at least rescheduled and allowed to be used to its full potential for medical research. All the things we've been asking for.
That's Ohio Congressman Dave Joyce, the co-sponsor of the States Act 2.0, who was receiving an award from Aaron Smith of the NCIA at this past week's Lobby Days in Washington. We go inside the Rayburn office building for a day in the life of a cannabis lobbyist.
Really appreciate your boss's position on the issue and want to be here as a resource.
Plus, the Pennsylvania Senate rejects the House bill to set up a state-run cannabis operation in the Keystone State, while Alabama Governor Kay Ivey bans all CBD smokable hemp products, basically shutting down that side of the industry in that state. And we'll hear from our new Alabama correspondent, Jennifer Boozer, on the impact for her business.
And unfortunately, after 7 years of good business, we just had a bill pass, HB 445, that will now knock out 90% of our products and set up regulations that are so much stricter than any other industry, including alcohol, that none of us will be able to stay in business.
I'm PCM TV founder Jimmy Young, here in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, for Lobby Days, courtesy of the National Cannabis Industry Association. And we'll have a report from Washington, D.C. after this on Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm PCM TV founder Jimmy Young, filling in for Elena Pinto, who's off this week. I apologize. But she will be back on June 2nd, and we start with our first reminder to download the free PCM TV app, available now on Google Play and the App Store. On that app, you'll find documentation of the past 4 years of the fight to end cannabis prohibition, with new shows that we've produced with a minimum of 10,000 views apiece on YouTube. Now, before you jump out of this video, I won't be alone introducing our news stories this week. I'm Jimmy Young in Massachusetts.
I'm Amy Carter in Michigan.
I'm Karen Black in Arizona.
I'm Kimmy Cannabis from Can I Talk About It with your Oklahoma Cannabis Report.
I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies, and this is the Nevada and Tribal Nations Report.
We start this week in our nation's capital of Washington, D.C., where Jimmy Young spent last week at the NCIA's Lobby Days. You know Jimmy as the founder of PCM TV, host of the NCIA's Voice of Cannabis podcast with Aaron Smith, and the executive producer of this Cannabis Coast to Coast news show. This week, however, Jimmy turned into a lobbyist. More accurately, he shadowed a lobbyist to see exactly how our government works. Here's Jimmy's report from our nation's capital.
Well, here we are in the nation's capital, and for those of you who don't recognize the U.S. Capitol building, that, of course, is where all the House of Representatives and the Senate meet to make the votes on the laws that dictate what we are doing here in the United States of America. But as you guys know, I'm here because of our relationship with the NCIA, the National Cannabis Industry Association, and they're a group of lobbyists that represent the businesses and in the industry of cannabis. But all those votes and laws are done at the Capitol, but it's over here across the street at the Rayburn Center where all the deals are made. And you'll never guess where they're made. They're made in a cafeteria over coffee. That's how this country works. These are the halls of the Rayburn office building in Washington, D.C., where legislative aides, congressmen, movers and shakers go from one meeting to another or meet at the famous Rayburn cafeteria for a snack or a face-to-face meeting or negotiation.
So many of the challenges that the industry face can only be solved right here in the nation's capital, from ending to ADE, to expanding access to banking services, and ultimately resolving the failure of marijuana prohibition so that our industry can be treated just like any other industry, fairly.
2 floors below that cafe, you'll find some tunnels that connect to the Capitol building across the street, or you can even save a few steps by taking a tram. Plus, you never know who might be walking in that sub-basement. I mean, Isn't that Congressman Dave Joyce from Ohio? He's the sponsor of the Stakes 2.0 Act.
Bring to the stage Congressman Dave Joyce.
I think in this administration, they've got a lot on their plate at the moment. But we have a president who's been debanked. We have a president who's said that in Florida that it should be at least rescheduled and allowed to be used to its full potential for medical research. All the things we've been asking for.
It's time for the federal government to catch up to what the states have been doing. And if we can't catch up, but I'm an optimist, I think we have a shot at it. But if we can't catch up, we at least need to get out of the way. I have a number of your businesses in my district, which is the heart of Las Vegas. I hope you'll come and see me there. I'll return the hospitality. And I look forward to partnering with you because, you know, the more this passes at the state level, the more you have representatives who've got to pay attention to their constituents' needs, whether it's small business or veterans or just recreational users. And so they're starting to listen. So we just got to keep making that noise. And as I said in an article I wrote for the Harvard Law Review, let's just puff past that bill.
Amen.
The National Stakeholder Summit that kicked off the NCIA's lobby days on Tuesday featured a panel of regulators from Maryland, New York, and Jillian Shower from Canada, who had a warning for all.
We've seen lots of challenge in states that have had different bills to regulate hemp for all different reasons, but the longer that it stays largely unregulated in finished product form, I think the more likely it is that we see one bad actor create one situation that puts in question the entirety of the industry.
Lobby days were all about the 100-plus meetings people from the NCIA set up in congressional offices. They even offered some advice from an aide from Senator Ron Wyden's office.
The number one thing that I appreciate when folks are coming in on any given issue is just taking a moment to level set and establish kind of each person's knowledge base for the issue.
So with that in mind, I was thrilled to tag along with Aaron Smith for my first meeting as a cannabis advocate with Jeremy Title, Chief of Staff from California Rep. Salud Carvajal's office.
Really appreciate your boss's position on the issue and want to be here as a resource.
Community reconciliation areas, they've basically taken pieces of the Farm Bill as it relates to the production of agriculture, are folding it into this reconciliation package along with these huge cuts to the SNAP program.
Later that day, I even ran into my new friend, Jennifer Lamboy from Hybrid Marketing, who I met at MJ Unpacked just 2 weeks ago in New Jersey.
I'm Jenny Lamboy with Hybrid Marketing Co. I'm here with my friend Jerry, and I'm curious to know, what does it mean for you to be here at NCIA's Lobby Days?
Well, for me, it started when I was 15 years old, and I've always been kind of on the advocacy side of cannabis. It just means a ton to me to be doing my civic duty, advocating for cannabis, talking to the lawmakers, and ultimately making my mark with them as it pertains to how this thing goes over the next several decades.
Lobby Days is really exciting for me because you actually feel like you make an impact and you get to go into these different representatives' offices, and I never thought that we had that power.
Being here at Lobby Days with NCIA is an opportunity to represent an industry I'm so proud to be a part of and to represent others that represent businesses, brands that change people's lives every day. It's an opportunity to unify the plant. We are representing hemp and marijuana, which right now I believe is a temporary conversation, but we can dig into that later. But ultimately, I believe that this is an opportunity to influence change and improved regulation to make our industry stronger and safer in the future.
For me, it means that I actually got to a place in my career where I can do things like this and make an effort to make a difference in legislation, supporting small businesses. It's just really exciting to have an opportunity to do something.
I'm here with my friend Chris Crane, who just won the Excellence in Advocacy Award for the NCIA, and I'm curious to know, what does it mean for you to be here at NCIA's Lobby Days?
This is, I think, the most important event of the year, and certainly the one I look forward to the most. This is the one time a year when members of Congress and their staff actually get to hear from people in the cannabis industry about how these policies and these laws are directly impacting their businesses on a day-to-day. There's nothing more impactful for these legislators than hearing directly from the people whose lives and businesses are impacted. And we get an opportunity to do that this week.
We will have more from Mr. Young Goes to Washington trip for the NCIA's lobby days later on Cannabis Coast to Coast News. For now, I'm Jimmy Young reporting.
Jimmy's appearance in our nation's capital wasn't the only story coming out of D.C. this week. Remember the story from about 3 weeks ago about the federal DOJ attorney, Ed Martin? He was looking to use federal laws to cite a cannabis dispensary in the district for being too close to 4 schools in their neighborhood. Well, this week, Ed Martin was replaced by former Fox show host Jeanine Pirro in order to take another position with the new administration. Before he left, he held a news conference where he explained his actions of targeting the location of that dispensary after hearing from one disgruntled parent.
We listen to the community. The community's up in arms that we have cannabis, marijuana, pop-up shops and shops all over the place. What gathers around those places is not healthy. It's not helpful. And again, the D.C. City Council has laws that appear to contradict federal law. I was down in Georgetown. These aren't Republicans. These aren't conservatives. These family members who are saying, "Hey, we don't want a store within 1,000 feet of a school, right? We want, and not only one, by the way, it's 4 schools within 1,000 feet of a pot dispensary, a pot shop." So those are the policies you hear when you listen to the people.
Here's one of the most interesting things about Washington, D.C. Right behind me is the Wishing Wellness, which is one of the medical dispensaries that are available to the public who has a medical card. I have a medical card, so I'm going to go check it out and see what a DC dispensary is all about in the shadow of the U.S. Capitol.
Inside the wellness dispensary in D.C. was the usual display of different strains in flower, pre-rolls, vapes, edibles, plus a unique feature, a well from the 19th century.
So before there was plumbing or aqueducts in the city, this actually used to be a communal to get water. It was made around 1840 or so, and it actually predates the building.
Do they overstep their bounds with you guys? Shouldn't you just be left alone at this point?
It's just a bit of a tricky situation to navigate because, according to DC, we had to be 400 feet away from a school or a library or things like that. But then when you take a look at the federal level, that number is increased to 1,000 feet. So it's just kind of the contrast between the federal and the local level, definitely giving you a bit of a conflicting piece of information. But, we just try to operate within the realms of what is, capable for us to do and try and, follow the rules as best we can.
A very strange incident in Oklahoma this week. A software glitch led to the notice of the cancellation of a number of licenses in that state, throwing that industry into a bit of a panic. Here's Kimmy Cannabis in Oklahoma with that story.
I'm Kimmy Cannabis from Can I Talk About It with your Oklahoma Cannabis report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. The industry was in a bit of chaos this week as the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority worked to fix a serious glitch in its licensing system. On May 14th, they announced that their Thentia system error had accidentally canceled thousands of business licenses. Business owners were flooding social media, confused and concerned, wondering if they were still legally allowed to operate. OMMA quickly responded, assuring licensees they could continue operating and asked those affected to report the issue through the contact form on the website. By May 16th, the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority confirmed the problem had been fully resolved. All canceled licenses were restored and the root cause was addressed in cooperation with the licensing vendor. They apologized for the confusion and thanked the community for their patience and understanding. But that's not all. OMMA has also reported a scam alert that's been targeting license holders. Someone posing as an OMMA agent has been calling businesses, demanding they wire $5,000 or more for fake violations. Here's the twist. When some business owners returned the call, it even answered as OMMA. Although it wasn't the same number that they used, it added to the scam's credibility. OMMA is clear. They will never call you to demand money via wire transfer. If you get a suspicious call like this, report it immediately at omma.ok.gov/contact. That is it from Oklahoma. peace, love, and all that good stuff.
In Pennsylvania this week, the Senate rejected that state's bill passed by their House of Representatives to open an adult use legal market run by that state. Last week, we had immediate negative reaction on that development from Claudia Post, an advocate in that state, and from CEO of Ethos Cannabis, Gibran Washington. Now they will turn to the Senate to support one of the bills that is being discussed that can lead to a legal adult use market. The good news of Pennsylvania, at least this week, there will be no drama from their governor, Josh Shapiro, who wants to open adult use legalization. Now let's check out what's going on in California, where a looming tax hike is set to go into effect July 1st, and it continues to threaten the hemp industry there.
Yarrow Kubrin reporting from Northern California. What's happened in the last week and a half? We've had an opening of a new Jane dispensary in bougie Healdsburg, Sonoma County. We also have had the Sonoma County Environmental Impact Report that has finally been published. Years in the waiting. This is going to impact permitting and policy locally. We've got until July 15th to provide feedback. Lastly, Cal Poly Humboldt, in association with UC Berkeley, the Origins Council, United Core Alliance, and LeafWorks, is continuing their research with a community participation tour. This spring tour throughout key geographic regions of California is studying intellectual property, the history of the cannabis genetics and cultures in these areas, and has been incredible. They just had their meeting in Sonoma County yesterday at the Hessel Grange. The Hessel Grange is the first Grange in the United States to have a cannabis program, and the leader of that program is also the vice president of the Granges here in California. So a lot of exciting stuff going on in this region. This is Yarrow Kubrin reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
In Arizona this week, there was a lot going on once again. Another testing lab gets busted for enhancing results, and now Curaleaf gets a European medical certification for a handheld liquid inhalation device. Here's Karen Black with the Arizona Cannabis Report.
I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Arizona health officials have cited Kaicha Labs, one of the state's largest, for more than a dozen violations, including unreliable potency and contaminant testing, incomplete records, and failing to properly distinguish between Delta 8 and Delta 9 THC. Some issues were flagged in previous years, raising concerns about oversight and product safety. Kaicha Labs remains open with no recalls issued, but regulators have given the company 30 days to respond and may impose penalties. Industry leaders warn these violations could impact public health and trust in Arizona's cannabis market. Governor Katie Hobbs has signed a sweeping new law restricting cannabis advertising. The law bans ads targeting anyone under 21, including ads using cartoons, toys, or child-friendly branding. Ads are now prohibited on public transit, in airports, and on billboards near schools and parks. Digital ads are only allowed if most of the audience is 21 or older, and every ad must display a prominent health warning. Violators can be fined up to $20,000, and the rules take effect July 1st, 2026. The other two remaining cannabis bills are stalled as lawmakers focus on the state budget. One would direct medical marijuana fund dollars to FDA-approved clinical cannabis research, while the other aims to expand rural licensing opportunities. Both measures remain on hold as the legislative session winds down. And finally, Arizona's cannabis industry is facing a sharp downturn, with first quarter sales in 2025 dropping more than 13% from last year. Medical sales plunged 28% to $52 million, while adult use sales fell to $261 million, nearly a 10% drop. This slump has led to dramatic job losses, with Arizona losing half its cannabis workforce in the past year, the steepest decline of any state. Market saturation, competition, and economic pressures are all contributing factors. Insiders also warn that rapid turnover may be affecting customer service, with concerns that Arizona bud tenders are less knowledgeable than before. As the market matures, falling sales, fewer jobs, and a less experienced workforce are raising new questions about the industry's future. That's all for this week's Arizona Report. I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
That'll do it for the A block, our first section of the Cannabis Coast to Coast News, but we have plenty more coming up in our B block, our next section, including more state reports, and next up, our international segment with Ben Stevens in Europe and Debbie Facey in Canada. Cannabis Coast to Coast News continues after this.
Looking for PR that over-delivers on expectations? At Maverick Public Relations, they pair big agency experience with personalized attention. From launching award-winning brands to securing top-tier media hits, their data-driven communications team helps visionary leaders and entrepreneurs rise above the media noise. Maverick PR is responsive, collaborative, and relentless about results and ROI. Visit themaverickpr.com and make headlines together.
We focus solely on the cannabis space. The cannabis is not just another item that we've put on our website and said, oh, we're in cannabis. We do cannabis and cannabis only, and we focus on cannabis day in and day out. So with Buds Group, we're going to not only work with you and give you advice, we're going to help see your project through to completion, and you're going to find at the end of the day, it'll be a fraction of a cost of working with a larger firm because our executives are focused just on cannabis and we run lean.